When people fail at delegation, I think as often as not, they're not actually failing at the task of delegation, they're failing at the task of feedback. Most non-psychopaths don't like giving people constructive criticism because it's hard and it's hurtful. And to be honest, the harder somebody works on something, the more difficult it is to criticize them, obviously, right? So when you've had an employee pour their heart and soul into a project and then you have to go in there and tell them all the reasons that it's not good, that as an exercise can be enough to just stop people from wanting to delegate at all. And what I want to offer to you is you're not just doing yourself a disservice. You're doing that person a disservice. You're inhibiting their personal growth. You're inhibiting their ability to deliver to you in the future. And you're putting yourself in a position where they are no longer as valuable to you as they could be. You know, God forbid you find yourself in layoff territory, and now the employee that you didn't cultivate is the one that gets put on the chopping block. In so many ways, just from an ethical and moral perspective, that's on you. So if you've taken it upon yourself to be an employer, you have to find a comfort with delivering constructive feedback. And I've got a 7-part framework that I'm going to give you, and it's not going to make it easy, but it's going to make it easier. And to be honest with you, I want you to always be uncomfortable with this. If you're really comfortable going in and just like, swinging a machete and making people feel like shit, then there's probably something wrong with you. You might be a clinical narcissist and you need to go get yourself checked out. For the rest of you, the majority of you, if you're uncomfortable offering constructive criticism, that's good. That means that you're empathic and you're considering the other person's feelings and you don't want to be hurtful and you're open to the idea that maybe you're wrong. And I think that those are critical prerequisites to being a good leader. So don't feel broken. Don't feel like you're ill-equipped here. Those feelings are not just valid, I think they're necessary. We need to put them aside for the mission at hand, which is cultivating talent and teaching this person that we're trying to grow into somebody that can be immensely valuable to us, what we need and what we don't. So here's the 7-part framework. When you're going to offer somebody constructive criticism, the very first thing that you do is you schedule a dedicated meeting specifically for the discussion at hand. I call this the anchor. What you don't want to do is casually at the water cooler, or the proverbial water cooler for those of us that are remote, just mention like, oh, hey, by the way, in between, how about them Red Sox and what are you doing for the weekend? I also wanted to mention that this could have been done a little bit better if you don't mind, and that's okay, I'll talk to you later, bye. Right? Like and we've all been tempted into doing that, and maybe you've even done it, but sneaking it into conversation or trying to bookend it between other topics, the issue there is you're not offering them the reality of how important this is. Right? There's a gravity to this, or it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be hard for you to discuss if it wasn't important. So what you need to do is put it on the calendar, send them an invite, and it's, hey Margaret, hey John, need to talk to you about this particular project. Through a time on the calendar. If that doesn't work for you, let me know. Probably going to take about 20 to 30 minutes. The reason I call this the anchor is because when they hop on the call, or when you meet with them in person, the first words out of your mouth are, hey, this is going to be a potentially an uncomfortable conversation. And you don't have to phrase it that way. Phrase it however you want. That's the way I phrase it. But what that's done is it's anchored the discussion in truth. Hey, just this is going to be a little uncomfortable. A little uncomfortable for me, a little uncomfortable for you. Nobody likes receiving constructive criticism, and that's where we're headed. So I just wanted to prepare you for that because I don't want to blindside you. And what's nice about it is you get the awkwardness out onto the table. It's not that it's not awkward, it's that you're not forcing them to kind of slowly seep into it as you find the courage to find your words. The other thing that it does is it emboldens you to begin to offer them constructive criticism right out of the gate, in as much as you want to get it over with as anything else. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to anchor it. Once the conversation has been anchored, offer an invitation. And you get to say, look, I'm not the end-all be-all. I'm not the master and commander. I'd love for you to tell me if you think I'm off base, if you think there's something I've misunderstood, or if you just disagree. I'm going to ask you to save that to the end though, because I found that these conversations tend to be more productive if I'm able to just show you everything that I'm seeing on my end, and then I will turn this around and I'm going to sit and listen. What this does, now that we have an anchor and we've established this is what's going to happen, this is what this discussion's about, this is going to be uncomfortable for both of us, the other thing that you've done is you've positioned them to be in a listening mode. By saying, don't worry, you're going to be able to defend yourself, you're going to be able to state your case, you're going to be able to tell me where I'm wrong. That puts them in a position to say, oh goodness, and hopefully it makes them hyper attentive. Because like, oh, well then maybe I should pay attention to all the things that you're going to say. So, 1, we're going to anchor it. Step 2, We're going to offer them an invitation at the end to, and I don't necessarily want to position it as a rebuttal, but to share how they feel about what it is that we've told them. 3, and this is most important, specificity. Step 3 is specificity. You want to offer them examples. So, if they're failing at a project or they're not doing something the way they're supposed to be doing, show them specifically where that is happening. Hey, in this application that we're building, you're not paying enough attention to the mobile experience. And mobile is more important than the desktop experience because it's 60% of our users. And let me show you these 19 areas where the mobile experience has been flawed. Random example, right? Maybe it's customer service related. And so you're going to show them specific communique or voice recordings or messages. Maybe it's their own supervision of an employee. No matter what it is, you can't come into these conversations with vague, opaque messages because number 1, it's unfair. Number 2, the improvement opportunity is just as vague and opaque. If you can't point to specific examples, then I would challenge whether or not you really understand what it is you're trying to critique. So anchor it, offer an invitation, and then move straight into specificity with really specific examples. The next thing to do is step number 4. Once you've kind of rounded this out, and if you really want to look at it this way, we're kind of like digging a hole, we're throwing ourselves into the hole, and now we want to get out of the hole. Well, you don't want to just show them what's wrong, you want to give them the desired end result. So I don't just want this. This is here's an example of an application that works really well, or here are some conversations that other employees have had that have de-escalated a customer that's been upset, or when I delegate something to you, here's the speed at which I need something to move. So here's the desired end result. So that's step 4. Anchor, invitation, examples, desired end result. Now move to them. Say, really appreciate you sitting there listening to all this. Again, I'm not Master Commander. I'd love to know how you feel about what I've said. Have I been unfair? Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything I misunderstand? And instantly expect to be surprised. Because they might come to me like, you don't realize why we had to build it this way. Or, the vendor requirements or the implementation, or we don't do quality assurance on mobile yet. Or, et cetera, et cetera. There are a bunch of reasons that you could be wrong. It's not uncommon for employees to need to defend themselves with things that might feel like smoke screens. As a young man, I used to sit there and dismantle them. Now I let them go. As long as I feel like they really understand what it is that I've offered from a constructive criticism perspective, if somebody says something that feels like they're trying to save face, my advice is let them save face. That's okay. As long as they get, and you feel like the behavior is going to change, we don't need to obsess over what might feel like a bit of an egoic exercise. I like to document their side. I like to sit there with a pad and a pen, because I'm old. You can sit there with your iPad or your computer or whatever, and I like to write what it is that they're saying. And I do this for 2 reasons. 1, I want them to know I'm listening. I want them to know what they say matters, and I'm taking it into consideration. 2, I want them to be cautious about what they say as well. If they start to say, well, oh, Jerry told me to do that. Oh, did he? And now that I've written that down and that's documented, it puts them in a position of having to be held accountable to those words. And you don't want to be placed in a he said, she said situation. So the documentation works on two levels. As soon as they feel like they've been heard to completion, that's really important. You want to make sure that you've set enough time aside so that they don't feel rushed. Now it's important to establish next steps. So confirm what you've said, make sure they understand it, confirm what they've said, make sure that they feel that you've heard them to completion, and then say like, okay, what are we going to do? What is the plan here? Is it, important that we check back in at a couple of predefined points just to make sure we're on the right page? Makes you feel like I'm setting you up for success. And the message that I like to give all employees is, look, if I didn't think that you were capable, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You just wouldn't be here. My time's my most invaluable resource. I'm investing it in you. I think you're amazing. And this should be the point, by the way, to build them back up. I think you're unbelievable. This is why I gave you this project. This is why I think you're uniquely capable. This is the things that I think you've done really, really well. Now that we've had the hard conversation, now you can go back and say like, look, I think you're going to absolutely crush this. What needs to happen for me in order for you to feel like you're empowered? So that's the next step. And then step number 7 is the follow-up. You have to loop back around and close the loop, even if they're doing amazing. You want to tell them that. Sit them down and be like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. I'm so grateful that you actually listen to my constructive criticism and you've taken action. This is awesome. Whatever it is, you want to close the loop and bring it back around so that you give them the moment where they know this issue is buried. So 7 steps: anchor, invitation, examples, desired end result, their side and take, confirmation, follow up. 7. That's how you had hard conversations. This isn't going to make it easy, but it will make it easier. And putting yourself in a position to have these conversations on a regular basis makes you a better leader. I don't want to say a better manager, because I don't want to be a manager. I don't want people that need to be managed. I don't like that paradigm of employment. I'm not going to sit here and watch you do your work. Either do your work or don't. And if you don't want to, then we can take care of that. And if somebody needs help or a nudge in the right direction, we'll absolutely do that. But cultivating this skill is so critically important, especially as your organization begins to grow. The more people you have, the more times you're going to have these conversations. And more importantly, the more of these conversations you're going to model for other people. Because where things go horribly awry is when you're not in the room and you have a middle manager talking to an employee, and maybe they're not treating them in a way that aligns with your values. That's behavior you have to model. People have to see it from the top down. So this is a framework that, feel free to chop it up however you'd like, but getting really good at having hard conversations is going to put you in a position of being a truly effective delegator.